Hey guys, it's Jennifer. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am coming to you with the mid-year book Freakout tag. And yeah, I am kind of freaking out a bit. I cannot believe that the year is half over. I think I've done this tag a little bit later than some other booktubers because I really try to wait until it's practically July, until it really is that halfway mark, because I want to give myself all the time in the world in June to actually make progress on my goals. But hey, we'll get there. The first question is the best book you've read this year. And for this, I have a few options. I'm really shocked because I would say that so far for me, 2020 has not been the best reading year by any stretch. I've had a lot of disappointments. In fact, I would say my disappointments outnumber my successes, and that's a sad thing to say. But basically over the past month, I think I've had my biggest successes of the year. I couldn't do this without mentioning Wolf Hall. I think objectively it's probably the best book that I've read this year, and I've been reading Anna Karenina over the past few months, so that's really saying something. I just love Wolf Hall. Bring Up the Bodies could also be here because that's also a 5-star read, but I did not like it as much as Wolf Hall. I didn't feel like it went as in-depth as Wolf Hall did, and so I think probably the objective best is Wolf Hall. But another favorite I've had is one I've read in the past month, and I am completely obsessed with this book and I highly recommend it, and that's Romantic Outlaws by Charlotte Gordon. And so what this is this is a dual biography of Mary Shelley and her mother, Mary Wollstonecraft. And so you're probably familiar with Mary Shelley as the author of Frankenstein, but maybe not as much with Mary Wollstonecraft, who was her mother, and she was also a writer. She was a very early feminist. She wrote The Vindication of the Rights of Woman, which is one of the very early feminist texts that we can point to. And she's somebody who was rediscovered kind of in the 60s and 70s as the feminist movement really got up off the ground. But between her lifetime towards the end of the 1700s and then, she fell out of popular favor for a wide variety of reasons, but she lived such an incredibly interesting life. I mean, this woman was on the ground reporting about the French Revolution. And I don't think I need to say anything about Mary Shelley. I love Mary Shelley. Frankenstein is one of my favorite books of all time. I just genuinely adore her, and I loved her long before I ever read Frankenstein. She's just a person and a figure in history who I've really had a real appreciation for, and I think through this book you get also a respect for her and you understand exactly what she and her mother went through, so it's told in alternating chapters. I genuinely could not put this book down. It was a complete page turner, and I don't know if I've ever said that about a nonfiction book. I think you learn a lot. I think it's told quite brilliantly, and you also get a peek into Mary Wollstonecraft's eventual husband, Godwin, who was also a writer towards the end of the 1700s and is Mary Shelley's father. I knew nothing about him. You get a good glimpse into his life, and you also get a pretty wonderful glimpse into the life of Percy Bysshe Shelley, who was Mary Shelley's husband as well. I just loved this. I adored this. I highly recommend this. This is my personal favorite book of the year so far. Question number 2 is the best sequel you've read so far this year. For me, that's The Shadow Rising by Robert Jordan. This is book 4 in the Wheel of Time series, and everybody and their brother has told me this would be my favorite in the series, and they're not wrong. I really loved book 3, which was The Dragon Reborn, and for me, I would say that's something the Wheel of Time has done thus far, is really build on each book so that each book I read is better than the last. I think we will eventually reach a stopping point with that when I hit what people call the slog. But this is one that I really, really enjoyed, mostly because something straight out of Norse mythology happened in this book, and I am so thrilled about it. I can't believe how well it was done, and that's the thing about the Wheel of Time, is that there are elements like that just thrown in, Arthurian elements, Norse mythology elements, Christian elements, and it's just such a fun puzzle to piece together, and it's just really enjoyable to look at the references he's making and kind of get a wider understanding of the world, and you really do feel like this is a vast fantasy world and that it's peopled with really wonderful dynamic characters. I just really love this. This is my favorite of the series so far. I know a lot of people also really love book 5, so I'm looking forward to trying that. Number 3 is a new release that you haven't read yet but need to. For me, that's Ruthless Gods by Emily A. Duncan. I am genuinely shocked I haven't picked this up yet. And I really don't know why. I think it's just that I've heard next to nothing about it. And a lot of people who reviewed Wicked Saints and everything last year apparently have not carried on with the series. And I'm not shocked by that, given how I think people expected Wicked Saints to be something that it was never trying to be. And so I'm not shocked to see that there are less people talking about it. But I've only seen a couple of people discuss it, and it's huge too. I think for me, I just have a lot of fear that this book is going to have second book syndrome and that I really am going to fall into a sophomore slump with it. I hope that's not the case. I plan on picking this up next when I'm filming this, but who knows. Number 4 is your most anticipated release for the second half of the year, and this was so easy because These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong is coming out this year. And as you might can tell from the title, this is a Romeo and Juliet retelling, but just wait. It is a Romeo and Juliet retelling set in the 1920s in Shanghai. I said, say no more, sign me up, I'm there. I don't need to know anything else about it. I want that book and I want it right now. Number 5 is your biggest disappointment. And like I said towards the beginning of the video, I just feel like I have had way more disappointments than successes this year. And so there were a lot of books I could have picked for this question, unfortunately, but I chose to go with the one that I had the highest expectations for that really let me down. And so objectively, this is not actually a bad book. In fact, I would highly encourage you to read it. I just did something stupid and I spoiled myself for what was going to happen in the first 100 or so pages of the book. And that's The Law and the Lady by Wilkie Collins. So I read the back of this book. That was a mistake, as it is for most classics. I'm reading Mary Barton by Elizabeth Gaskell right now, and what did I do? I read the blurb on the back of the book, and it said something was going to happen that I thought was easily going to be the plot of the book. Hasn't happened yet. I'm over halfway through. And a similar case happened here. This is a mystery novel, which is kind of Wilkie Collins' wheelhouse, and so I read the back of the book. I knew what the ultimate plot was going to be, but it spoiled the first 100 pages. And so the mystery that the characters are trying to figure out for that first 100 pages is something I already knew about. And so I was constantly thinking, get there, figure it out. I can't believe you don't know what's going on. And so I think that really frustrated me on this read in a way that so far it hasn't with Mary Barton. I've just enjoyed the journey with Mary Barton more than I did with this book. I also think it was too short. The other 2 Wilkie Collinses I've read are The Moonstone and The Woman in White. They are massive books. I think The Woman in White might be 700 pages. The Moonstone might be 600. And so I just wanted the characters to have more room to breathe, but they are really fantastic characters. I just had such high expectations for this because Wilkie Collins is potentially my favorite Victorian writer. And so I wanted this to be on the level of The Moonstone or The Woman in White, and it just wasn't. And I don't think it was trying to be, so I really do think that's something that was personal to me and my reading experience, but I am very disappointed by this. I genuinely thought this would carry on my trend of having 5-star books with Wilkie Collins, but alas, it did not. But like I said, it was a 3-star book, so it's not bad. I just wanted it to be a 5-star book, I think, and it wasn't that. Your biggest surprise of the year, for me, that was The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. So I was pleasantly surprised by this because once I heard that the Hunger Games prequel was going to focus on President Snow, I won't say that I lost my mind or anything like that, but I was apprehensive about it. And I know a lot of people just turned off the second that they heard it was going to be about President Snow. They just never wanted to see anything from his perspective. I was open to that because I did not think that Suzanne Collins would let me down, and she didn't. But since finishing this, I have seen a lot of people's negative reviews and I've watched a lot of people's vlogs, and the complaints that people have about it, I certainly see. But for me, a lot of those elements just worked. I have a full review that I did on this if you would like to see my full thoughts on it, so I will link that in the cards and down below if I can remember to. I know I'm bad about that. Number 7 is your new favorite author, or this can be a debut or an author who's new to you. And so for me, this was fairly easy. My favorite author that I've discovered this year is Sarah Donat, and she writes primarily historical fiction set in Renaissance Italy. This is In the Company of the Courtesan, and this is the next book that I have from her to try. So far this year, I have read from her The Birth of Venus, which is about a girl who was living during Savonarola's reign in Florence, and I have also read the first in her Borgia duology, and I will tell you what, that is easily the best book on the Borgias I have ever read. That's really saying something because I am trash for the Borgias and I will read anything about them and likely enjoy it. But I do think hers is easily the best historical fiction that I have ever read on the Borgias. And so I'm really excited about this. This also focuses on a real historical figure, I believe, who frequently posed for Titian. So this will take place in Venice. I'm really excited about this. I just love the way that she writes. I think it's really beautiful, and I think that she does a lot of incredible research, and she puts it into these books in a really wonderful way, and it never feels ham-fisted. So I'm so excited that I found her this year and that I have more from her to look forward to. Number 8 is your newest fictional crush. For me, that is Mr. Knightley from Emma. And can I rightly say it is Mr. Knightley from Emma, or is it Johnny Flynn playing Mr. Knightley in the 2020 adaptation of Emma? I don't know, but for me, they're connected. Newest favorite character. This was interesting because I don't know that many characters have actually stuck out for me much this year at all. But I decided to choose Levin from Anna Karenina, which I am still currently reading. But we've reached just such a happy point in his life and the narrative where I'm at, and I just adore him, and I also adore Kitty. So Kitty could go on this list too. Levin has some weird and some outdated opinions, and I try to overlook them because I know when Anna Karenina was written. But aside from some of those issues, I really do like Levin, and I think he and Kitty are objectively the only nice people in Anna Karenina. So I'm really rooting for them. Right now where I'm at, everybody's happy. I just want it to be like that to the end of Anna Karenina. I just want them to be happy. Who cares about anybody else? I just want Levin and Kitty to get their happy ending. Okay, a book that made you cry. This is fresh. This is still an open wound. I don't know that I can actually talk to you about it. It's A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. Yes, I have finally read it. I know this has been on my yearly TBR for like 3 years and counting, but I have finally read it. I finally see what all the fuss is about. And there were elements of this book, let's be straight, that really did fall flat for me. I thought this was going to be a 5-star book, and I thought the character work in it was going to be insane. For me, what I found, there was only one real character in the narrative. He carried this book on his back, and what happened to him in the end is truly one of the most moving passages I have ever read in literature. I cannot believe that Charles Dickens managed to make me cry. And normally when I say I cried at a book, I got choked up. No, I am saying tears fell from my eyes reading this last chapter. It was so moving, and like not in necessarily a depressing way. I don't want to spoil anything. I don't want you to think the book ends on a negative note, because in a weird way it doesn't. It does not end on a negative note, in my opinion, but there's just something about it that is so human and so wonderful and also horribly tragic. And so you're torn on how you feel about it, because this is easily a big character moment for this character. But it's also extremely sad. This is just brilliant to me, how Charles Dickens managed to do this in a book that was peppered with characters I didn't care anything about, but this one sole person. And he really gave him the most spectacular ending. This rates quite highly for me among the Charles Dickens that I've read so far, but I don't think it's beat Great Expectations. I also cried at Great Expectations, but I didn't cry like this. I am genuinely shocked that this book pulled that emotion out of me. So this book really got me. I highly recommend it, especially if you're in need of a good cry. A book that made you happy. For me, this is the Jane Austen Society, and I just really loved this in a way I did not expect to. This is just such a really charming book, and I think if you like historical fiction, if you like Jane Austen, that you will really enjoy this. It's so lighthearted compared to some other World War II adjacent fiction. And I think it really is a book lover's book. I think it's all about loving classic literature, not just Jane Austen, but just how books help us get through really tough situations, how they are so meaningful, how we return to the same stories over and over again, and what about those stories is special for us as people. I just was really charmed by this book, and I expect it to remain towards the top of the pile for the rest of the year. I genuinely expect when I do my tops of 2020 in January next year that this book will be on that list. Okay, number 12 is the most beautiful book that you've gotten to receive this year, and for me that's Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. I have not read this yet, and I haven't even hauled it, but first of all, okay, gorgeous. Wait. Just you wait. Wow. This is about Shakespeare's son named Hamnet, and he died, we think, of the plague, so it's always been thought that there is a tie between Hamnet and the play Hamlet because those two names were interchangeable at this period in time. And so I've heard some really fantastic things about this. I think this is up for the Women's Prize this year, like The Mirror and the Light. I'm excited about this, but I don't know if I'm ready for it yet because a lot of people have said that it deals with grief head on, and I lost my grandmother towards the very beginning of the year, and I don't know if I'm ready to see grief written that realistically on the page. I don't know if that will be hard for me. Maybe it'll be therapeutic. I don't know, but everybody seems to love this, so I am looking forward to it. And what do you need to read before the end of the year? So I have decided to be pretty lenient with myself about all of the goals that I set for myself on my channel and personally regarding reading. I've decided to kind of be lenient given how 2020 has gone thus far. And so I won't say that I expect to read all of the big books that were on my big book challenge, classics community challenge for the year. And I won't say that I expect to read all of the Brontes. I think I'm gonna make this kind of a 2-year challenge given that 2020 has been very stressful and it's taken its toll on my reading. I honestly do think it has. And so it's made me think I can't read these big books because I just can't focus on them right now. But I will say I would love to read Bleak House by Charles Dickens by the end of the year. After reading A Tale of Two Cities and just being stunned by it, I feel like I'm ready for one of those big tomes of his with multiple different characters. I would like to read maybe 1 or 2 of Charles Dickens's less popular novels before I dive into Bleak House, because I know that Bleak House rates really highly for a lot of people and it's in their top 5. And so I don't want to read all of the gems first and then be left with something that I'm probably really not going to get on with. I expect Hard Times will be that for me. I just don't expect that I will get on with Hard Times. But that very well may change because I am obsessed with Mary Barton and it's dealing with, I think, similar themes. So you never know, but right now for me, Charles Dickens is an author that I really want to read more of. I would also like to finish Villette. I have started reading this and then I put it down because I just wasn't in the mood for it. But if I read Villette by the end of the year, I think I'm going to be pretty happy with my Bronte project. So that was the mid-year book Freakout tag. If you have not done this tag, consider yourself tagged, and if you don't have a channel, let me know your answers down below. I really love this tag and I love seeing it every year, and people's answers vary so widely. It's just a really entertaining tag. But that's going to be all for me today. I hope you're all having a great week. Happy reading. Goodbye.